Frederick Douglass was born Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey in 1818 in Talbot County, Maryland.
His exact birthday is unknown.
But he later adopted February 14th as his birthday because his mom called him her little Valentine when he was young.
He was separated from his mother, Harriet Bailey, at a young age and lived with his grandma, Betty Bailey.
Frederick Douglass never knew who his father was, but he assumed it could be his white slave owner, Aaron Anthony.
When Douglass was 7 years old, he was separated from his grandmother to work as an overseer.
When Frederick Douglass was around the age of 12, the slave owner's wife taught Frederick the alphabet, breaking the law by teaching a slave how to read.
As he progressed, he began to read newspapers, political material, and books of all kinds.
Reading this new material led him to further question the concept of slavery.
He used his knowledge to teach other slaves on his plantation how to read at the weekly Sunday school.
In 1837, Douglass met Anna Murray and married soon after. They later went on to have 5 children: Charles, Rosetta, Louis, Frederick Douglass Jr., and Annie, who died at the age of 10.
After many unsuccessful times of trying to escape slavery, on September 3, 1838, Douglass successfully escaped by boarding a train to Maryland. He was dressed in a sailor's uniform and carried identification papers that a free black sailor had given to him.
From there, he walked to New York.
In a letter he wrote after his arrival in New York, he stated, "I live more in one day than in a year of my slave life. It was a time of joyous excitement which words can but plainly describe."
Douglass continued on his journey on up to Massachusetts. There, he joined quite a variety of organizations and regularly attended abolitionist meetings.
Douglass became good friends with an abolitionist, William Lloyd Garrison, and was unexpectedly asked to speak at one of Garrison's meetings at the age of 23.
After Douglass gave an outstanding speech, he was encouraged to become an anti-slavery lecturer.
In all of Douglass's life, his most popular work is his autobiography written in 1845 titled Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass as an American Slave.
Within 3 years of its publication, it had sold over 11,000 copies, and was also translated into French, Dutch, and was published throughout Europe.
Douglass officially became free of slavery in 1846 when British supporters purchased his freedom from his slave owner.
Douglass believed that education was key for African Americans to improve their lives.
Therefore, he had devoted his life to help educate them. He was also a firm believer in women's rights.
Douglass believed that the world would be a better place if women were involved in the political sphere. Because of that, he attended the first Women's Rights Convention in 1848 as the only African American.
In 1851, Douglass merged the North Star newspaper with the Liberty Party paper to form the Frederick Douglass paper.
By the time of the Civil War, Douglass was one of the most famous black men in the country. Just his presence alone gathered crowds.
By post-war 1865, the 13th Amendment had been ratified outlawing slavery.
After the Civil War, Douglass was appointed to several important political positions. In 1872, Douglass became the first African American nominated for Vice President of the United States.
In 1882, Douglass's wife Anna died. This left Douglass very depressed, and the only thing that kept him on his feet was his political commitments.
After 2 years, he met a white woman by the name of Helen Pitts, who was 20 years his junior, whom he later went on to marry.
Because of their different races and age difference, their relationship didn't go over well with some. Helen's family stopped talking to her, while Douglass's children had very hard feelings towards the relationship and felt that their mother had been betrayed.
Helen and Frederick traveled to England, France, Italy, Egypt, and Greece between 1886 and 1887, where Douglass made many appearances and gave many speeches.
In 1888, Douglass became the first African American to receive a vote for President of the United States.
On February 20th, 1895, after giving a speech for the National Council of Women, Douglass returned home and died of a massive heart attack or stroke.
He was buried in Mount Hope Cemetery in Rochester, New York.
Frederick Douglass can be given a lot of credit when it comes to the abolishment of slavery. Without his courage and persistence, African Americans probably would have suffered quite a few more years of slavery.
He is remembered for bringing the harsh realities of slavery to the attention of white Americans and living as a prominent African American when white Americans thought that this was impossible.
He is one of the most prominent figures in African American and United States history to